Hey everybody, Wayne here. In today's overview review, I'm taking a look at Warfighter, the fantasy card game, specifically the Plumeria core box, designed by Dan Verssen and published by WWII. Warfighter Fantasy is a solitaire and cooperative game that takes the Warfighter system, previously seen in modern tactical combat, World War II, and other eras, and takes it to the world of high fantasy. Warfighter Fantasy gives you the heroes, the skills, items, weapons, armor, powers, equipment, spells to build a party, enter a dungeon, defeat hostile monsters along the way, and hopefully defeat the boss monster at the end. You can start a campaign and take a party of adventurers all the way from 1st level to 6th level, or you can play standalone adventures. This core game takes place in the world of Plumeria, and it comes with a campaign map that is placed over the corner of the tactical display. Let's do a quick overview. I do have at least one complete adventure playthrough to show off the game. I'll cover my pros and cons, and at the end I'll give you my final thoughts. All right, let's go down to the table. All right, my explanation of Warfighter Fantasy is going to be from the perspective and to the audience of someone who has either never played a Warfighter game at all or really has no experience with Warfighter Fantasy specifically. If you have experience, you can go ahead and skip ahead. You should see timestamps at the bottom of the video here. You can skip ahead to my pros and cons, my final thoughts. Otherwise, let's begin. So, Warfighter Fantasy, it comes with this tactical display. I have a neoprene one that came with the treasure box from the Kickstarter. Otherwise, it'll be a mounted display. You're going to have in the Plumeria core box this campaign sheet that goes on the tactical display here. You can see there is text for campaign setup and single adventure setup. Those are two different ways you can play Warfighter Fantasy. And potential, assuming they do make expansions for this game, potentially you can add in different campaigns, different campaign worlds, because when you look at this campaign map, not only does it tell you, okay, when you start a campaign, how many towns of the different difficulty levels or different sort of levels. So, for instance, Newson is the very lowest level. It goes common, renowned, legendary, and then mythical is the highest level. All these locations here, Danbrook, Mooncrag, Thornkeep, etc., those are going to be different towns, which then each one has an adventure for you to go on. And it has some, extra information here that's campaign related, and also some just helpful, 1 gold equals 2 silver. Each silver would be 2 copper, so 2 silver would be 4 copper, things like that. It also tells you that in a campaign game, you begin with 50 resource points. When you do an adventure, it's going to tell you, on the card, how many resource points you begin with. Now, you may be saying, well, what do you mean by resource points, Wayne? Very, very simple. So, in Warfighter Fantasy, really all the Warfighter games, the Warfighter system, you take a certain amount of resource points at the beginning, whether it's a campaign or a one-off, and you're going to build a party. You're going to build a squad. You're going to build whatever. In this game, you're building a party of heroes. Now, what you can do is you can pick from 4 different types of heroes. Those are player heroes, such as Gareth, who is a 1st level fighter, Aaron, who is a 1st level cleric. They are player heroes, which means they have a hand of cards. You create a hand of action cards based on their health, plus whatever hand size bonus, which you can see is on both of them. Those action cards are cards that you will use during your game to assist you, give you bonuses to combat, to replace using your actions, because each character you have is going to have 2 actions, generally speaking. It can vary depending on health, etc. But overall, you're usually going to have around 2 of them. Those can give you bonus actions. They can give you bonuses on combat. They can change the targeting of the enemies, etc. Those action cards are kind of the event cards, right? Those are kind of the wild cards you're going to have to play to switch things up as you're playing. Now, when we're looking at the player heroes here, and we'll get to the other types of heroes in a second, let's just look at a couple things quick. You're going to have, in the core set, they go from 1st up to 6th level. You're going to have 6 separate cards for them. This is Gareth, the human fighter. It's going to tell you, what race they are, what class they are, their name. The resource point cost. So when I mentioned those resource points, right, you start a campaign, you have 50 to spend. That is going to be the number in the shield up here. That number in the gold circle is going to be the number of hero points it takes to level them up. So think of experience points, but this game uses the term hero points. The arrow with the number in it is their movement. That just helps them when they're moving from location to location on the tactical display, which we'll cover in a second. You have their overall health, pretty self-explanatory, right? Loadout, that is basically the weight they can carry. Think of that as, their encumbrance, what it would be. Different pieces of equipment, armor, weapons will have a loadout rating, and that is just the weight against them. This one is their cover, defeating cover. So Warfighter system, it started off as a modern tactical combat game. Cover was very important. Cover is less important in this game. It's still part of it. You will be rolling a die for it, but it's just much less of an impact. It's almost always, not always, almost always something that is immediately defeated. And then you have any sort of, this is hand-to-hand. So obviously he's a fighter. He has a +1 bonus to that. He's going to be doing a lot of melee combat. And then within the text of the card here, you're going to have a bunch of different things depending on the type of hero he is. I mentioned as him, he is a player hero, so he has actually has a hand of action cards, and it says +1 hand size. Generally speaking, that's going to equal with the health to mean that they always have 6 hands. You're going to have 6 cards, per hero, player hero. 1 toughness, which toughness is just one of the abilities along with luck that you can use to either eliminate a wound or prevent a wound, I should say, or luck will help you with die rolls, etc. And then melee speed, that is just a special ability. He has a card. So I mentioned cards in my intro. There's cards for spells. There's cards for divine powers for clerics. There's fighters have abilities. Thieves have abilities. The clerics have their powers. Wizards have their powers. So, even though a fighter may not have spells, they're going to have special abilities or powers they can do. I mentioned the other types of heroes. So there's player heroes. Here we have Gareth and Aranar. You have Colin. He is a team hero. He's not a player hero. What are the differences? And we're going to work our way down here. The key one was something like a team hero, and the rest of them, they do not have a hand of action cards. And the hand of action cards does drive the locations, placing locations. So you're going to need at least 1 player hero. Now you can play with multiple player heroes, but me, someone who plays solitaire here, and the game is solo or cooperative, as a solitaire player, I don't like to manage a bunch of hands. You can if you want. I like to do 1 player hero, so pick someone like Gareth, pick someone like Aaron, and then I fill out my party with these other characters. So Colin here as a team hero, and by the way, you can see the TH there, so you know he's a team hero. If they don't have anything written there, that means they're a player hero. Same deal as with the other 2, right? He has his resource point cost, which if you notice is a little lower now. So for instance, something like Gareth at first level versus Colin, they're both human fighters, yet you can see that Colin costs 9 and Gareth costs 13. So because, you don't have that hand of action cards, and it's very clear on there, no action cards, but you're saving yourself quite a bit of resource points. Now, someone like Colin as a team hero, all he has, no action cards, but he doesn't have any equipment with him, so you're going to have to buy any equipment for him. Now, if you want to kind of go down the line here, you have what are called squad heroes. Squad heroes, again, they're even cheaper. Here's a first level human wizard, Kymor, but now you're getting away from, they don't even have equipment. You don't buy equipment, They only are going to have what's on the card. And then same thing with Herka. She is a first level human cleric. She's a non-player hero. Again, you control them, you purchase them, but she has different things on. You can see that she does not have a hand of cards, nothing like that. Her health it's on there, although it's a little hard to read sometimes. Let's just look through it quick. All the same things, the movement, the cost, all those things. But when you look at this card, you can see this hero. You're not buying equipment for her, for him. What you're doing is you're looking at what is her health at. So his top health is 2 only, and then or 1, right? So if he gets hurt, you can see how many actions he has. So you read it across, right? So the column is the health, and then the row is going to be, okay, this row is for action. So full health, he has 2 actions. Remember I mentioned most heroes are going to have 2, but look, when he's down to 1 health, he only has 1. And then you have, if he's going for a hand-to-hand attack, now he's a wizard, right? So he has fire hands and minor deflect, so he's going to be trying to use fire hands. But if he does happen to have hand-to-hand, you need to do that kind of attack. He does have an ability to take that kind of attack. It's just going to tell you, instead of looking at a piece of an armor or a weapon that specifically has information on it, it's just going to say, hey, right here, this is what you have to roll on the D10. Range is striking, which is the striking range. I'll cover that in a second. Causes 1 wound. Also, he's going to give you certain things when you purchase him. He comes with 2 experience. He has 3 focus, which focuses what he casts his spells with. And then he has the lore skill. Different characters will have different skills. It may be lore, it may be shadows for like a thief, etc. And then basically the same thing for the non-player hero here for the first level cleric Herka. She has divine powers because she is a cleric. She follows Odin. which gives her special abilities. And then you notice it says Old Mace, which means she has the Old Mace piece of equipment. She has the Minor Heal Divine Power, right? That's one of her cleric powers. Comes with 1 experience, and then her hand-to-hand is +0 since she is only 1st level. Let's take a look at equipment quick. All right, I went ahead and laid out some gear, some armor, some weapons, and some items. So mundane gear, things you can purchase. And you're looking at the cost in the top right corner. A torch is, per torch, by the way, is 1 copper. And then I mentioned, remember the loadout. So it takes 1 to hold this card. It's on here though, it says that each hero that is not a player hero may equip 4 of these. So you can put the torch's icon, you put that counter right here, just to keep track of them. Torch is something that is going to expend to permanently reduce an adjacent interior or night location's entrance cost by 1. So it's going to help you when you're moving through the dungeon. You have things like a backpack. So for 1 gold, you can purchase it. No loadout costs. It actually holds up to 5 loadout of gear. You know, you might want to, if you have the money and you have the opportunity, you're saying, oh, I don't know if I can hold everything, get a backpack. Maybe you can start doing that. Some of your heroes are going to either come with armor or they're going to purchase it. You know, you may want to, again, you have the cost, right? Gold, copper, how much it costs. The armor in this game is interesting. So what it is you're going to have the armor on your character. And when you are hit in combat, you are going to roll the D6, because there's D10 and D6. We'll cover that in a minute. You're going to roll a D6, compare it to the cover. So I mentioned the cover in the game for the most part is not a huge impact, but if a character does have armor, then it will be. And that's primarily when it is, or some enemies. They're going to have your roll a D6. They're going to roll, their hostiles will roll against you. If they roll your cover or under, it's going to impact the sturdiness of the armor, which you keep track of with counters here. Wearing down your armor, basically it wears down your armor class gets worse. And there's all different types of armor. And they may tell you certain things. Some of them may impact you. Some of them, I think one of them is it reduces movement. You just never know what you're going to get with certain types of armor. And here you have weapons, right? So classic fantasy weapons, right? You have a mace, you have a long sword. Same thing with the cost and the loadout cost in the corner. And then with a weapon, so I've showed you the card, like this wizard, right? Who has his attack, everything. This squad hero has his attacks printed on the card. Well, when you have a player hero or a team hero and you purchase equipment for them, you're then going to use the cards, right? So the cards, you put the mace on one of your clerics who is a player hero or is a team hero or a longsword, right? So your fighter is carrying a longsword. Let's say we got Gareth the fighter and we buy him a longsword. Now when he attacks, he is going to be rolling that D10. And again, we'll cover combat in a second. He has his hand-to-hand of +1. The longsword has a possible hand-to-hand bonus. Different weapons. This one requires a hand-to-hand +1. So it can only be usually wielded by a fighter or a higher level, say, other class. And then it tells you, okay, it's edged, it's pointed. Those are keywords. They may matter when it comes to certain hostiles. Hostile may, say, be weak to blunt weapons, right? A mace be more effective against a gargoyle, right? Because they're like a stone-based hostile, and the mace is going to mash them up. Longsword here, what you're doing is you're checking to see the 2-hit number and then the penetration. The penetration is related to cover. So for a very standard, just a regular I'm attack with it, you won't need to roll a D10, get a 6 or higher with any modifiers, and penetration is 0, so just whatever the cover is. Or you can spend, for 1 experience point, you can use a skillful attack, you get a +1 to your 2-hit, and the penetration is a little bit better. Or you can spend 2 experience, and it'll +2 to your hit, and 2 penetration with the finesse. So it's all about giving you options, right? Giving you those options when you have your characters. And finally, we'll look at items. These are treasure you'll pick up in the game. When you are defeating monsters, which we'll cover in just a second, they're going to have a number in the corner that's going to give them treasure. Let's actually go ahead and look at a couple hostiles here. Oh, this was actually my last game. One of the games that I covered on my channel here. This skeletal swordsman. So he doesn't have any, but you see this right here is when you defeat him, that's how many copper, silver, gold, and then the gems. And we'll cover the hostiles in a second when we get out here. Those gems are this number right here. Each item has a different number on it. When you earn gems from defeating monsters, defeating hostiles, you're going to check that number. If you have that many, you're going to go ahead and flip it over. That is now yours. You can take 2 mystical coins, expend any time to purchase 4 gold of mundane gear. It could be something that's only worth 2, right? Or if, say, you don't have 4. Say this pops up, this is on top, but you only have, You only have 2 gems. Well, then you would go ahead and discard it. Go to the next one. Oh, that was worth 2. Vulcan's Ring. Many heroes in your location are suffering wounds from fire or hot. Use to stop 1 wound. Limit 5 uses per adventure. Or if you don't like it later on, when you're in town, you can go ahead and sell it for the gold. So this is like your magic items, right? You're going to get your regular equipment you're going to be purchasing, and then some will have them. Remember the Herka that has the old mace on her? Or you're going to be purchasing, or you're going to be picking these up during your adventure. Okay, let me go ahead and reset the board, and I'll show you guys kind of how the locations and hostiles work, and then we'll wrap up the overview. All right, so imagine you've constructed your party. You've chosen, I'm doing a one-off adventure. Am I doing a campaign? You had your resource points. You spent them on your heroes. Also, just a quick thing, when you spend your resource points and you're purchasing heroes, whatever is left over, and you always want some left over, so you have X amount of resource points, you spend so many, whatever is left over gets converted into gold, 1 resource point per gold. Those gold are used to buy extra equipment. So equipment, that mundane gear, those torches, by the way, always bring torches, trust me. Things like that, right? You're always going to want to have those extra equipment options. You're going to need some money before you start. But say you have them, and they're all equipped, right? They're all ready to go. Maybe you have these handy little hero things, or maybe you don't. Doesn't matter. You'll be just fine. You're going to assign a number to every hero, and you're going to give them their action tokens equivalent to how many actions they have. All right, now you're deciding, again, one-off adventure or campaign, almost doesn't matter, because what are you going to do? You're going to go to a town. You're going to go on that adventure that's from that town. So let's look at an example one right now. All right, you say, hey, I'm going to go to Thornkeep, the town of Thornkeep right here. I know it is a nuisance level, so one of the lowest level, right? So say you're starting off like, I don't want to go anything too crazy. I'm going to start there. You're going to start off with the town card, and the town card is going to say Thornkeep, and it's going to have a little bit of flavor and usually a skill check available. So for something like this, hire local guide, you can roll if someone has lore skill check, which is going to be one of your wizards with a +3 modifier, by the way. So it does help you to gain 2 torches. Remember, I talked about how important torches are. So hopefully you win that. You're going to go ahead and place that town right here on your tactical display on the town's location. And it's going to give you information below it, what you can do when you're in town. Now, you're at Thornkeep, an adventure you're going to go on at this point with the core game. Each town is just going to have the 1 adventure as far as I'm aware. So, for Thornkeep. All right, fixed. Okay, so you actually have this adventure card. We know we had Thornkeep. This is the Thorn Graveyard. Plumeria, right? That is our campaign, or that is the world we're in right now. And we know that Thornkeep right there is our town. So it's all related. So if you have trouble finding them, just sort through, go look for those keywords. Thornkeep is a town. Thornkeep right here telling you this is an adventure. An adventure's on the side there for Thornkeep. And just like before I mentioned, when we're looking at cards here, these are going to tell you a bunch of things on here. One, it tells you obviously what it is, what's related to, all those things. Also, it's going to tell you down here, type, this is a dungeon adventure, so you are going inside, down into a dungeon. Those are the resource points you have if you're doing a one-off. This is how much time you have. So each turn is going to be kept track of in the top right of the display there. It's very important. The objective is going to be the Flame Grotto. That is a location. And then Gripmore is going to be the boss guy, which he has an N in parentheses, means he's a nuisance level boss. And loadout +0, just in case maybe there'd be a negative or a plus saying, hey, you can carry more or less equipment. When you are creating this dungeon, and to know how far you have to go to get to the objective, which let me go ahead and show the objective and then we'll cover that. So you have this card, it's going to be put down, but we're going to check it in a second. You have your objective, that Flame Grotto. And within that Flame Grotto, it's going to have some keywords. It's a dungeon, there's fodder, free to activate. It's a hot environment, eliminate that hostile Gripmore. There's actually, within this, you're going to have Gripmore himself. We know he's the bad guy, right? And he is the boss. And he will have, on the back of his cards, his minions, which he has. So he is embedded in a Flame Grotto. He's immobile, means he stays there, doesn't try to chase you. His minions are Cave Sturges. So you would have these Cave Sturges stacked with him. Go ahead and put all of those right at where the objective location would be. Now you say, well, where's the objective location? Those all just say location, Wayne. Aha, very, very simple. When you look at the card here, it has these numbers on the right. These are the different types of locations. Nuisance, common, is it renown and legendary? I can't remember. But regardless, the point is, those numbers are going to tell you how many locations stand between this card and the objective, the adventure card, which as you can see, it says adventure. It goes right here. So it'd be an empty location, and then your objective right there. When you are playing and you have those action cards, they're going to have location cards. It's basically a placeholder card. As soon as you draw one, you replace it with a draw from one of the location decks, nuisance location, common location, etc., which you'll then be placing. This one we know it's 2 nuisance locations. It's only going to be drawn from them, and then go ahead and be placing them. Now, with the locations as they're put out, one thing to remember, and these actually apply to all the cards as far as I'm aware, there's these 3 numbers. You're going to have the 2 here will apply to all of them. This one only applies to the adventure. This one in the middle here, this like silvery guy with the 4 next to him, that's how many hero points you get for clearing this adventure, or experience points, right? Those are the ones you use to level up your hero. The left here is a shadow modifier when it helps to hide in shadows for your thieves. And this number with the sword and the number is when you're closing from from range 0 to striking range. Okay, so you're in the adventure, you're going to be putting down locations, there's going to be spawning hostiles, you're drawing from cards, placing hostiles. The hostiles, like I mentioned, 2 key things. The one, you're drawing them, you're checking your hostile cards, there's a bunch of information on here, it's not really that hard. The key is, remember, is how many there are, which will generate hostile stacks using the new adventure manual rules. So for instance, this Goblin Archers here, so it's Goblin Archers, right? This one hostile card actually has 5 Goblin Archers, times 5, very easy. They have 1 health each, and each one only has 1 attack. So when you place him in a location, and you move into that location, you can place your hostile card here if you want, use this display. You have striking range, range 0. You have little counters for your heroes you'll place there. You'll eventually move into striking range. The Goblin Archers are going to be targeting and attacking you. How they're going to be doing that is you're going to have 2 cups, bags, whatever you want to use for targeting counters. There's a main one, which is each bad guy themselves. It's going to look like this. This is their version of an action counter. You draw one, draw however many enemies there are. So for instance, here, where there's 5, so you draw 5 of these. Each one is going to target a random member of your party. You know that number 2, and that's why we have the numbers next to our heroes. And then when they act, so when they conduct their hostile reaction attack, you flip it over to acted side. At the same time, if you have a hostile that has multiple attacks, so how you could tell would be if this Goblin Archer 5, right? If there's 5 of them, they have 1 attack each. If that number was a 2, what you would do is you would draw 5 of those that I first showed you, those hostile targeting counters, and then you would draw 5, so 1 for each of them, right? Because they have 2 attacks of these. You can see it's a little bit different icon. You're still gonna have a random hero up here, and the same thing acted, just to show you that, hey, this hostile stack is making multiple attacks. Maybe seem complicated, it's really not. The original rulebook does the game no favors, but we'll cover that in a little bit. All right, so you move through the locations, you defeat hostiles along the way, you heal your guys, you collect equipment, you collect treasure. You know, I mentioned before already, a couple things on him, then we'll wrap up this overview because it's gone on long enough. You know, how many of them are, what is their hit points, so how many wounds they can take, how many attacks they have. This is a treasure you get. You only get 2 copper from him, not too much. Whoever defeats him gets 4 experience points, although the experience points, in this top here, are basically in a big pool, so it really doesn't matter who holds them. You look at him, his cover is 0, so he has very poor cover. And then this roll is when he rolls a d10 to attack, which, by the way, like I mentioned before, it's d10 and d6, because you're going to roll d10 for the actual 2 hit, and the d6 to defeat cover. You check the number, he rolled a 5. Now there's going to be modifiers, right? So say you are at range 0, so you're out here, you're not in striking range yet. Well, he actually gets a +2, which means that his 5 now has become a 7. Now you look at him, he rolled an 8 or less is a miss. It'd have to be at least a 9 to cause a wound. 10 to 12 is a wound and pushes you 1, so pushes you out of range or pushes you out of location. And then 13 plus would be 2 wounds. Because he did not get a hit, there's not going to be any wounds to you. However, because he defeated your cover with the 1, or possibly did, he may cause a vuln. A vuln is a big part of the game. They're going to stack with people. They're going to stack on the hostiles. They're going to stack on you. Each of these vulns is going to be a +1, +2, and they can stack. So each time you get a vuln, you or them, that is the number you apply when you're rolling to hit and cover. So they have 1 vuln, you get a +2 on a hit against them, +1 cover against them. Same thing against your heroes. If you are vulned, stacks +4, +2, etc., etc. They stack 2 at a time. Very quickly, you get a few vulns on. You're almost guaranteed to get hits on either them, or they're almost guaranteed to get hits, including hits that cause multiple wounds on you. You go through the location, you defeat hostiles, you defeat the big bad guy. There's rules on that. watch my playthrough or playthroughs to see all that in action. You wrap it up, you get the reward, you get those hero points, you get any treasure you've earned along the way. You're either done with your one-off, or if it's a campaign, you get out of the dungeon, you go back to town, you can, heal, buy and sell, you can level your guys with the hero points, etc. You work your way through the Plumeria campaign, leveling, getting stronger, hopefully, right? And defeating stronger and stronger monsters until you're fighting the worm, the dragon, and other big bad guys versus instead of these little guys, right? So, okay, hopefully that covers. There's a lot to the game. I don't want to cover everything. Hopefully it gives you a good idea what the game has. Whew. Let's take a breather for a couple seconds. There's a lot to it. Whew. Okay, I think we're good though. Let's finish up this overview. We're done. Let's go to my pros and cons. Cons first as always, and then we'll wrap up with my final thoughts. All right, so first off, the most obvious, well-known problem with Warfighter Fantasy as of the game's release and the recording of this review is the rulebook for the game. It is, without exaggerating, a mess. There are conflicting terms and rules, and trying to learn the game from the 100-plus page Universal Warfighter rulebook is just asking for frustration, headache, and the desire to put the game away and never open it again. The keyword sheet is also missing 2 keywords, one being an extremely common one called fodder that's on almost every card that provides bonus experience points when you defeat hostiles. It's a real shame that this game shipped with such a poor rulebook, or rulebooks, as technically you get the Warfighter Universal book, and then you also get a dedicated solitaire, Warfighter Fantasy only rulebook. The problem is though, they're broken, and that has undoubtedly hurt the game's reception. If people are given a rulebook they can't learn the game with, then they're going to think the game itself is broken, and they're not going to give it a chance. Thankfully, a fan has created a good, although not perfect, rulebook called the New Adventurer Manual. It can be found on the game's Board Game Geek page. So, and even better, DVG has apparently entered into a deal with him where they will print this rulebook going forward. That said, the game was in development long enough for years. It should not have shipped with a manual or manuals in the condition they are. This is the type of thing that not only hurts a game, it hurts a company's reputation. My second issue is with a couple aspects of the combat system. Not the core of the system. That is Warfighter at its heart, and I have no problems with it. I love Warfighter. There's a reason it's such a popular system, and it's been ported to so many different eras. No, my issues with combat relate to, one, how multiple hostiles are handled, and then what I do like about it is, unlike other Warfighter games, you don't end up with too many physical cards on the table. Instead, when multiple hostiles are called for, you simply draw extra attack counters, so the attack counters here, and then possible the extra ones if they have multiple attacks, and placing them on the tactical board here. That does reduce the clutter of having too many cards. However, and related, so my first issue is with the vulns. Out of the box, every hostile is going to cause at a minimum a vuln on your hero, when they're attacking, because they're almost always going to defeat cover unless they get what causes a wound, but you have armor to defeat it, or you cast a spell to deflect it. Other than that, you're going to be getting a lot of vulns. Each vuln, the vulnerability, right, counters I showed you, is going to give your health a -2, -1, or 2 hit, right? So it means it is easier to hit you, and it's easier to defeat your cover. Well, and they stack to infinity according to the main rules. There's no max. So if you get 3 or 4 vulns on you, they are automatically getting, not only are they going to hit you causing wounds, but the higher levels of attack are going to cause multiple wounds and multiple bad effects, right? A hit is not just, it causes a wound. If they roll really high, which if they have a +8 to hit you, odds are they're going to roll 12 plus, they're not causing multiple wounds, they're pushing you out of the combat zone, they may be pushing you out of the location entirely, and causing other bad effects. It's really hard to survive. It's really hard if that happens. So I wish there was a limit to the quantity of vulns, or even have them maybe scale with hero level as a -2, -1, or +1, +2, +1, as it says on the counter. It hurts a first level hero who has less health and abilities more than it hurts a 6th level hero. It just feels unbalanced and not very heroic. The second problem, and more serious, is the amount of hostiles that many cards have. Most cards are going to be 4, 6, even 10 hostiles. You know, right here, this would be the final, imagining the final battle. Here, the Flame Grotto. It's not that bad. You have 7 of these cave sturges, and then Gritmore, himself is just one of him, although he does have 2 attacks, and he's going to cause a lot of damage, and he has 4 health. Overall, though, you're only dealing with, what is it, 7, 8, 9 different counters, actions, and sort of attacks that can potentially happen to you. However, let me give an example from a recent game I had. I placed a dungeon location card. I drew 2 hostile cards as it indicated. One was a Harpy, which is actually made up of 6 different hostiles with 2 attacks each. Then I drew a Fire Ant hostile card, which is 10 hostiles with 1 attack each. That means with those 2 cards in the attack area here, right, this tactical area, my party of heroes of 4 was going to face 16 separate hostile stacks, so 16 monsters with a total of 22 attacks. Now remember, each of those 6 Harpies has 2 attacks and then 10 from the Fire Ants. Now let me be clear, this isn't a balance issue, right? It's not that it makes the game harder, because your heroes are much stronger and more capable than the average hostile, and will generally mow them down with, explosion spells, fighter attacks, effects from your hands, action cards, etc. Rather, this is an issue of the game feeling fiddly and combat quickly becoming tedious. I wish it wasn't that way. Instead of me having to resolve 22 separate attacks that have kind of a low chance of hitting me, until the vulns add up, each one involving rolling multiple dice, right? Rolling D10, rolling D6. You're checking 2 hit numbers. You're checking for vulns. You're checking for my heroes if they have an ability or card or an action card to mitigate the combat results. You're adding, subtracting modifiers, etc. I wish there were fewer actual hostiles, fewer attacks to resolve, but to keep the balance, they were more powerful, right? It's like DVG had this great idea to reduce the number of hostile cards they have to deal with by converting extra hostiles to just the targeting counters, which is awesome. Then they completely threw that time saver out the window by making you continuously fight swarms of enemies. I hope what I'm trying to say is clear. I like the combat system of Warfighter in general, or I really like it. And I kind of like the system in Warfighter, but I don't like how many hostiles I'm forced to deal with, location after location, and resolve combat for. Rolling dice is fun. Rolling 60 plus dice and resolving 30 combats in a turn is not fun. I'm being swamped by the combat resolution system. It makes combat drag, which is unfortunate, but because outside of that, I really enjoy the Warfighter Fantasy combat system. Okay, that's it for the cons. On to the pros. First off, you get a good amount of content in the core game. There's around 400 cards in the core game, multiple heroes of different types. Each goes up to 6th level. They come with equipment, spells, powers, and a stack of action cards. The core game also comes with 15 unique adventures, over here on the campaign board here for Plumeria. And they're an escalating sort of difficulty, right? Escalating level of power. And you can play each one as an individual adventure, or you can start a campaign and play through all of them. Do you want even more? Well, then I have good news for you. The game actually shipped with 12 expansions. More heroes, more equipment, more spells, more hostiles, and adventures to go on. Between the core game and the expansions, there are already dozens of hours of entertainment. There's one thing you do get with the DVG game, it's content. Second, I like the art in the game. It's not overly fantastical, and I know some people prefer the fantasy artwork to be more detailed, but I actually like the simplicity and cleanliness of the art. The cards are all clear, easy to read. Once you're used to it, sometimes some of the information on here can be a little overwhelming at first, but as soon as you know how to read it, it clicks. Now, some of the iconography on the counters could have been a little bit more distinctive, but everything is labeled or clearly understood once you literally set it up and start playing. When the game is set up on my table, it really catches my eye and it draws me in, and that's really all I can ask for from a game. Third, I love the variety of content and ways to play. Like I mentioned before, you can play every adventure as a one-off, give you the opportunity to build a different party of heroes each time. You can try different combinations of classes and skills till you find something you really enjoy playing. Or you can start a campaign and, create an adventuring party from scratch at level 1 or higher. Work your way through the adventure. You don't have to start at level 1. You read it right? You could start at one guy at level 3. But you work your way through the adventures, gaining levels, skills, powers, and best of all, loot, right? all while clearing the dungeons of Plumeria of the bad guys. And you're going to mark them off as cleared, and you're going to sit there and be leveling up, getting more powerful, clearing more and more areas, giving you that sense of accomplishment. You know, giving you the ability to either do one-offs or play through a campaign is a huge bonus of Warfighter Fantasy. It lets people who want to jump around and experience all the content do so, while also letting people who want to craft a story with their own party of heroes have that opportunity. Speaking of which, although there are only 4 core classes in the core box, Fighter, Wizard, Cleric, Thief, one nice aspect of this game is you can run with only one player hero, who the player hero, remember, has the hand of action cards, and you can fill out the rest of your party with squad heroes, team heroes, etc. They don't have action cards. The reason I like that is when playing solo, I don't want to manage multiple hands of action cards. In Warfighter Fantasy, I can run one player hero, manage their hand, then run the rest of my heroes off their player cards. It keeps the game from becoming too fiddly, or should I say more fiddly, or keeps it from increasing table space beyond what is comfortable for a solo player. You know, take all this together, you have a game that builds an incredible narrative. It feels like an old school role-playing game, one that you can play solo, and ultimately it gives a rewarding experience. It's not an easy game. I did find myself adjusting the difficulty a bit with house rules, but 99% of it I left alone and just let the dice fall where they may. Okay, that's it for my pros and cons. Let's end with my final thoughts. Warfighter Fantasy, once learned, is a fantastic experience and a wonderful game that is unfortunately marred by one of the worst rulebooks you will find in modern gaming. The new Adventurer Manual saves the game, and it gives you the tools you need to learn and play it. But I would be negligent if I didn't talk about how DVG has let us down with this release. I am very disappointed. You know, at this point I'm speaking as a fan of the system and a fan of Warfighter Fantasy. I know people have been turned off by the poor rulebooks in this box. I see them talking about it on Board Game Geek and on Facebook in various groups and on YouTube. They are disappointed and upset. They're right to feel that way. Gaming is not a cheap hobby, and when we put money into a game, we, and I, expect it to be playable out of the box. I preach that in all of my reviews. When I buy a game, I should be able to open it, learn it from the rulebook provided, and play it and experience the entire game. I shouldn't need to download or print out any updates, errata fixes, or new rulebooks. Because that's the sad thing. Warfighter Fantasy, you know, with a couple little things aside, is a blast to play once you are comfortable with the rules and you know how to play it. I've had the game on my table longer than I needed to for this review, simply because I've been having a lot of fun with it. There are some questions I've seen from people that I am unable to answer in this review. Can you truly bring your soldiers from Warfighter Modern or World War II into the world of Plumeria and fight fantasy creatures? Can you bring your wizards and fighters into the jungles of the Pacific Theater of World War II? I have no idea. I haven't tried it, and perfectly honest, I don't particularly want to. You know, as much as I enjoy how the different Warfighter games use the same base system and how easy that makes it to jump from game to game, I do prefer to keep the eras apart. However, feel free to explore, push the system yourself, and see what happens. Warfighter, the fantasy card game, had high expectations, and it failed to live up to them. I do hope to see a second edition. Now with changes to, every aspect of the game, although I wouldn't mind them taking the opportunity to streamline combat, but really instead, I want them to publish the game with a new, solid rulebook, one that players, new people were handed and said, hey, learn this game and play it from. And maybe throw in some player aids, things that this game deserves. Give players the tools to learn and play your game, especially one as kind of complex but enjoyable as Warfighter Fantasy. If you do that, you're going to be rewarded with a loyal and dedicated fan base. If you fail to, well, you know what can happen. I just hope with Warfighter Fantasy, it's not too little, too late. Thank you to everyone for watching. I hope you enjoyed this review. Please let me know what you think of my video and this game in the comments below. And until next time, everyone, later.